Hey all, welcome back to this video tutorial on application development using AngularJS and REST API. In the last video, we spoke about creating the components in the Angular application and also the routing concept, wherein with the help of routing, we can achieve this in the application. So when I click onto a login button, login link, I'll see that login page, and if I click onto this register, I will now see the register view. Now in this video we'll actually now start working on to this part. We'll get the username, I mean the email and the password from user, and click on a submit button. We'll get this data, we'll pass it to the server API. We'll get the response from the API, and based on whether it is successful login or invalid login, will display the next part. So let's go ahead and create a new method into the uh, login component, which will actually accept the data. So what I will do is I'll go to the login.component, and here I'm going to add a method that will be authenticate. Okay, and that is going to accept the user object. I'll tell you how I'm going to get that object, and for now I'm only going to print that object into the console. Okay, so there is that method, and I want to call this method on the uh, form submission. So I'll go to this um, form tag, and I'll handle the event. So this is the way you handle the event. Ng submit is an event is equal to authenticate function I'm calling, and what is the value we are going to pass to it is the value of this form. But how I'm going to get the value of this form is by using this hash my form is equal to, I need to write ng form here. So if you want to process the form values, you must put ng form directive in the form. If you do not have that, your form cannot be processed the way Angular does it. You can normally take the values otherwise. So now I'm giving the name to my form as my form, and I'm also initializing it as an ng form. So if it is an ng form, Angular will take care of processing the form. How? You see here. So to authenticate, I'm going to pass the value of my form dot value. So what will happen is whatever the fields we have added into this form, all will become part of that form, and an object is constructed, and that object will have those properties like email, then password. All of those fields will be stored into that object, and that object itself we are passing to that authenticate function. So let's see the output first. So if you see now, there will be an error. If you just go to F12, press F12 to find out the error, and this error says there is no directive with export as set to ng form. Now the reason we are getting this error is because we have not added the forms module into imports array of app module. So if you go to the app module here, you should import the forms module because these modules, these directives are present in forms module. So but forms module needs to be added to the import list, and I'm going to say like this: from @angular / forms, and I will import forms module. Right, so there you go. When you add that forms module into the imports array, the compilation is successful, and you'll also see the output. Right, if you are using the ng form, you must add the you must import the forms module. So now if I click on to this and submit, see I'm getting that object, but it is an empty object. It is an empty object. Correct. So now that that function is getting called, all of that is happening. So this value is also getting passed, and that function also is getting called, and that function is printing that user object. But what is going to happen now? This is the input field I have, But did I specify the name to this field? Answer is no. Did I specify the name to this password field? The answer is no. Then what you need to do is, in order to make sure that this will become part of that object, you need to give the name to this field is equal to email, and you need to also specify that as a ng model. If you don't specify ng model, it is not going to work. So you should give two things to the form fields. One is the name, and ng model attribute must also be provided there. Now if I just do that, let's see that. Now refresh, I'll say a, and there you see that object. So I'm getting the data into my component, and this data now will pass it to my API, and we'll check whether this data is correct or not. Alright, that so this is how you process the forms in Angular, by specifying it as an ng form, and for that ng form you need the forms module in the imports array, and then on click of ng submit is an event. You call the authenticate function. You can write your own function, and you are passing this myForm.value. But myForm will have the fields only in case you add a name and ng model attribute to those fields. Alright, so now what I'll do is now, in order to invoke the server-side API, I will create a service. So if you see the architecture of any Angular application, it will be like this. So you have different components. These components can go into different modules, but these components are the views for user. And anytime you need the data, anytime you need a data from the server into your Angular application, we do it through the service. So now we'll create a service so that this component can call that service, this component can call that service, this component can also call that service. So for example, let's say get videos is a method present in this service. This method can be called by this component, and this component. So this way you are going to achieve the reusability, and this service will in turn call the APIs on the server. So this is the server side API, and with the help of HTTP client object, HTTP client module, HTTP client, we will be able to call the server side API. So for that we need to create this service, and creating service is very simple. So what I'll do is I'll say ng generate services, sorry, I'll say service, and I'll say services slash user service. I'm going to create a user service. So automatically a file is created, and that is going to have a class. So let me just show you that file now. So services folder I have, and then service.ts, so user.service.ts, and the name is user service. And here I'm going to add the injectable decorator. This is called decorator, not the annotation. And here I will now write the methods that will actually call the server side API. But now for calling the server side API, I need to inject the HTTP client object. So I'll say HTTP private HTTP colon HTTP type. So this is how we are achieving dependency injection. This is called dependency injection. So HTTP client must be now from import from @angular slash common slash HTTP. So I'll say HTTP. Okay, and when I inject that dependency, I can now call the methods by using http.get, http.post, http.delete. Those methods I can call. So this is how you can inject the dependency. And now I'm going to add a method here which says public, so not public, I'll say sign in. Okay, we will accept a user object, and here I will say http.get So it is a post method, so I'll say post, and here I will provide the URL, so colon slash slash localhost colon 8080 slash authenticate. If you remember, our server side API has this URL, comma, I should pass that user object here, and that returns a promise object. So now what I'll do is I'll say convert that to a promise object. So now, and then this promise object I will return back to the caller. Okay, and the same way I'll say sign up user, and I'll say return this.http.post again, and the URL would be http colon slash slash localhost colon 8080 slash register, and it is also going to accept the user object dot to promise. And now these methods I will be calling from my login component and register component. So now in the register component I should need that object of service. So again I can use the dependency injection. So private service of type user service, the imports is added here. In the constructor you will add that, so that is a dependency injection. In the authenticate, now I will say uh, I will say uh, service dot sign in, and I will pass that user object dot, then it accepts a anonymous function. Okay, so I'll say console dot log response dot catch error console dot log, I will say error. So this is how you will call that. But again, if you see now, if you run it again, you will get an error onto the this thing, say no provider for HTTP client. Now no provider for HTTP client is because HTTP client is inside HTTP module. The way we added a forms module, we need to also add a HTTP module, HTTP client module. Okay, so now again you will get another error, and let me just give a call. There is that. Now the problem here is it says that the access to XML HTTP from origin. So CORS policy means cross origin requests. Now in order to avoid this error, you have to do one thing onto the server application, which is allow cross origin requests. So here I will say at the rate in my user controller, I will say cross origin, and I'll say allow credentials, allow address, all I'll say star, comma, allow methods is equal to stars, all methods, and origin also I'll set it to star. Any origin can. Also I'll just remove this method part from here. I will just keep these two, allow headers, and then I will just rerun this application another time, and then we'll see the output on the client side. Right, so what is happening, if you see that from when I click onto this button, it is calling a method in the authenticate, and here I'm using the service object which has been injected into this component, this dot service dot sign in. There you go, and then correct. So now what I will do is, let's check, so it's still building. All right, so now I have added that user controller, sorry, on the user controller I have added this cross origin requests. I have allowed that, and then from the client application I will just enter a@b.com and my password, click on submit button, and I'm getting that data. And if I give the incorrect details, submit, I will get the response error saying that this uh, data. So if you see the error, authentication failed, invalid credentials. All right, so in the next video we'll call the register API also. So thanks for watching, we'll see you in the next video.